it's important to note before we kind of like get further into it, like the football does not drive the story. I think he wanted to talk about this big part of American culture and like, the sort of roots of it at the high school level. And he found that Odessa was kind of like, the premier place to sort of get at it as a sort of cultural artifact. But he's not really like his game recaps exist and are there, but they're not really driving the story. He is often sort of using it to get at the players who are featured, the like 5 or 6 players who are really emphasized in their story and their journey, as well as like what's going on with the team, how they're perceived, and it makes for really good sports writing. I want to read like one sort of excerpt, and this is from when Permian High School plays Marshall High School, which is the high school that Odell Beckham Sr. went to and was a star running back at the time. And this is just a regular season game. It's a non-conference game. It's not like particularly important. And this is a passage about a player who never appears in the book again. And it's just like part of his description of the game, but he's sort of like unveiling a lot here. And so it reads as this. Marshall linebacker Kevin Whitworth tries to get up off the field in the middle of the fourth quarter. There is a sudden interlude in the frenzy of the game as he takes off his helmet and rises only to his knees. The sun is beating down, and the humidity makes every piece of clothing stick to his skin like heated molasses. And Permian is knocking on the goddamn door again. And it's not the Mavericks he is playing for, but the entire town of Marshall. And there are 8,000 people screaming like they are all giving birth. And it is up to him not to let Permian score, even though he is sick to his stomach from exhaustion. Whitworth begins to vomit on the grass, which stinks in the heat and has been torn to bits by cleats and the crash of helmets and the endless screams of the fans. No one pays attention except for Trapper, the Permian trainer, who starts shouting at him from the sidelines. Gut check, baby, gut check. Yes, it is a gut check, a test of how much Kevin Whitworth wants to play this game. He's done vomiting. He gets to his feet and stays in for the next play. Permian's fourth down at the Marshall 20 fails. And I just love, he's got some like David Foster Wallace sentences in there, and he's sort of like narrating the game and telling the story of this linebacker while sort of like moving the story along. And he's sort of revealing something about the precarity and the danger that's sort of inherent to high school football and like what these 15, 16, 17, and 18-year-old kids have to like do to their bodies to be able to perform in front of these whole towns and sort of keep going. But he's not really like, and that's all there, but he's letting you think about that. He's not doing it himself, which I really like. And I just think like, there are so many like passages like that in this book that I just really love and make the book extremely engaging as a text and revelatory.
Yeah, I think, I wonder a lot, and I go back and forth on whether or not this book is as enjoyable or enjoyable in any way to like a non-football fan or to somebody who wasn't into the sports aspect, because as you say, he's not really his interest is in sports. He says that he's a sports fan. He wants to cover football, but he's really interested in the town and the city and like the people there and the communities that form around football. But as you read in that passage, his descriptions of the game are really important, even if they're not the main focus, right? Right? It is like they are crucial details to how these people come across is based on how he describes them in the game, right? So like when you see Mike Winchell, who's the quarterback, and he's very quiet and reserved and has this very hard life, and but then like as he becomes more prominent in the offense, like there's so much that is captured in these like slant passes he's throwing and stuff, and like the way he becomes more important to these like 2-minute drives, it really reads crisply. And I think the football is really integral to the storytelling, even though it's not primarily a football story, I said, like I said, I go back and forth on whether like I would recommend this book to people who are not football fans. I think it's almost it's like a testament to the book that it's like both really important and not important.
Yeah. And I think he like is very uh like he does a good job sort of describing Odessa, which is his focus as well. And he's there in the fall of 1988 to cover this team, and he's there with them from August to December, like the football season. And coincidentally, another text that I was kind of reminded of when rereading this book, or that I thought a little bit about as a point of comparison, is Roger and Me, which is Michael Moore's documentary about Flint, which he is like filming at the same time. That are both interesting texts about the late Reagan Bush era and kind of what's going on in America in that period of time, especially in these like declining sort of heartland cities. I mean, obviously, it's pretty different between Odessa in Texas and Flint in Michigan, but it's important to remember like this is rooted to like a specific moment where there like a lot was shifting in America, and I think like Bissinger, to his credit, is able to recognize a lot of that.
Yeah, I think they're both, talking about deindustrialization and the sort of loss of a particular economic way of life, and especially in these towns, both Flint and Odessa, which are shaped around a particular industry. Obviously, the auto industry in the Michael Moore case of Flint, Michigan. But here we're talking about the oil industry, which has its own sort of particular characteristics. And so I think it's worth, now talking a little bit about Odessa, Texas, which is where Buzz Bissinger ends up. He apparently talked to several college football recruiters, asking them like, "Where should I go? Like, what should I if I want to cover like high school football? Like, what should I do?" And they were all just, and enough of them told him like, "Just go to Odessa," and he would be like, "Why?" And he's like, "Just," they were like, "Just go there." And
Now, how did I find Odessa? It wasn't hard to find then. Its football team, Odessa Permian, was absolutely legendary at that point in time in 1988. It ended up winning, I think, 3 or 4 state championships in the 80s, and what I would argue was the most competitive playoff system in the country. Then 64 teams vying to be the state champion. They were ranked number one in the preseason, and what makes a book? It's storytelling, it's narrative. You want your reader to turn the page, and my hope was that Permian would get to the playoffs as they were always pretty much guaranteed. But then there was Odessa.
so I think it's important to like talk a little bit about Odessa because that's the place where he is, and I think that's the school he's at is called Permian High School. It's not Odessa High School. Permian is named after the Permian Basin, which is where they found a lot of oil, which is revealing. It is a relatively new school, but the Permian Panthers are, by many measures, the most successful high school football team in Texas. The school opens in 1959. And in just the 30 years that it's been in existence, by the time Bissinger shows up, it's won 4 state championships. It's been to the finals 8 times. It has the best overall winning percentage in the state since 1951. And, Odessa itself is not what I think a lot of people picture when they think of Friday Night Lights. I think a lot, as this is sort of what we talked about in the introduction, which is that people think of Friday Night Lights as a story about like small town America. But Odessa is not like a small town. It's a city, kind of. Its population is about 90,000 when Bissinger is there. Um,
Today it's 110,000,
yeah,
uh,
it's
which is about the size of Ann Arbor, which people can't shut the fuck up about.
yeah, and so it's not like a small, it's certainly not like a small town or village or something. It's an oil town is what it is. It's a town that like as late as like the as World War II, almost nobody lives there, right? It's basically like an abandoned area with like some oil rigs. Then in this boom, the oil boom that comes to Texas in the late 50s or in the 50s, it swells in size. And in just the period from the late 40s to 1988, there's several booms and busts in the oil industry that create like waves of new money and then crashes of like unemployment by the time Bissinger shows up there. And you see the way that like has these these effects. And like, I think it's important to recognize that, Odessa is not Mayberry. It's not like this, podunk little, everyone's all like, no, everyone's showing up in church together. Everyone knows each other's names. Like, no, it's like the way it's depicted in the book. And I don't want to be too harsh because I think Bissinger says he has affection for Odessa. And I think, he has empathy for it, but it sounds awful. It is one of the most like disgusting places you could imagine. There's like nothing there. It's all flat. There's he includes all these statistics, like the fact that it's considered the second worst city in the country out of 333 that a quality of life survey in Places Rated Almanac did in 1989. There's a description from this guy, J.D. Cohn. He's a doctor who moves from Oklahoma in the 1940s, around the time of the one of the first booms in the population. And this is his description of Odessa when he get his initial impression of Odessa. And this is how it's described in the book. All he could see as he drove into town that first time was the red cast of the clouds from a winter storm. At night, there were the equally eerie sight of the gas flames, huge fissures of fire coming from the oil rigs where natural gas, an unwanted burden back then, was being burned off. This must not be planet Earth, Cohn told his partner. This must be hell. But it wasn't. It was just Odessa.